Coming up, what exactly is a land-grant university? Then, Ohio State traditions that didn't survive. And later, fascinating memorabilia from the University District.
Support for Columbus neighborhoods is provided by American Electric Power is proud to sponsor WOSU Public Media Columbus Neighborhoods. Working together with our communities, we're committed to powering a bright, boundless future for us all.
At Ohio Health, we believe it's important to have a healthy understanding of the world around you. That's why we're proud sponsors of WOSU Public Media and their work to educate, entertain, and inspire the people we serve.
Bailey Cavalieri, your relationship with your law firm doesn't need to be complicated, it just needs to be right. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Ohio State celebrated its sesquicentennial as a land-grant university in the 2020 academic year. You may know what sesquicentennial means, 150. But do you know what land-grant means? We know some people who can help us figure it out. Sloopy's Diner is a mainstay at the Ohio State University Union for students and faculty alike. Inspired by the 1950s, its menu is packed with breakfast favorites, diner-style classics, and sandwiches named for notable student leaders and alumni. And in honor of Ohio State University turning 150, I've gathered a few of these notable leaders together to share about its land-grant mission. President Michael Drake, Provost Bruce McFerrin, and history professor David Staley. Well, I have to say, it is really a privilege to have all of you here today. Ohio State going into its sesquicentennial, celebrating 150 years. We know Ohio State as a land-grant institution, but what does that mean, and how does that make OSU different from a non-land-grant public university?
Well, as you said, we're really pleased to be one of the country's leading research universities, and the land-grant designation comes from the Land Grant Act of 1862, signed by Abraham Lincoln at the height of the Civil War. And this was a federal grant to states to enable those states to start universities that would do two things. One, they would educate the sons and daughters of the people living in the region, essentially the sons and daughters of the middle class, which was great. And second, the universities would work on behalf of and in conjunction with their broader communities to do things that, in addition to educating the students who were there, they would also contribute directly to their communities.
And this was really a transformational piece of thinking at the federal level. You think about, 1862, we're in the midst of the Civil War, a really difficult time. And Congress passed the Homestead Act. They empowered the transcontinental railroads in 1862. Things like that expanded us across the nation. The Morrill Act and the land-grant universities lifted us vertically. It brought people up to a point of sharing in the educational power of society.
Which is exactly what Justin Morrill wanted.
Exactly.
The author of the Morrill Land Grant Act. I think he wanted to attend college or university and couldn't. And instead went off and became a successful businessman, but wanted others to have that opportunity.
Yeah.
And he was relentless. It was 10 years.
Many years, right.
10 years of work before it was finally passed.
So that was a revolutionary thing.
Absolutely.
But is the
Like,
land
really?
grant, is that just a 19th century idea, or is that mission still relevant today? And if it is, how has Ohio State adapted and changed?
It's relevant in this very moment, and it's one of the great things about this act, the concept of the land-grant university, which is to elevate the sons and the daughters of the people of the community and the region broadly, and to apply that education to developing new knowledge to solve the problems of society, is relevant today and tomorrow. It's been one of the great one of the great parts of the backbone of the growth of this nation over the last 150 years.
These were to be agricultural and mechanical colleges. They would teach agriculture and mechanical arts, what we would today call engineering, and military science. So they had this practical orientation that I think bled very easily and quickly to a research focus.
And so many people still actually equate the notion of land grant with agriculture, because that was so much a part of its founding. It was one of the missions, as David says, that really set the tone. But what our major land grant universities have done is they've evolved into comprehensive universities, but they haven't lost the commitment to discovering new ideas and translating those to practice, to making them something relevant to society, to solving those complex problems.
So what started 150 years ago is still so relevant today. It's amazing to me that concept could yield so much
Very
in
durable.
the 21st century.
Very durable.
Yeah, it's like a good idea,
Absolutely.
Kept going.
Absolutely. And now we have the regional campuses. How do they play into the land grant mission?
As we become a more and more successful university, we've become more and more selective and competitive, harder to be admitted. And to maintain the access part of our mission, it's been very helpful to have regional campuses which have a different opportunity for students who, for whatever reason, aren't interested in coming to or are ready to come to the Columbus campus at the beginning. There still is an Ohio State option for them as they leave high school. And there are many reasons that people are place-bound or want to be at a smaller university, et cetera, and so we've been able to broaden access through our regional campuses as we've continued to grow the excellence across the university, including here in Columbus.
Those students are Ohio State students. If you want to be a Buckeye, there are a lot of different doors that you can come in.
Was there any specific provision historically as part of the land grant that this institution receiving this money, this grant, must maintain some way of staying affordable for the people that you serve?
I wouldn't use the word must necessarily, but, and to be clear, the idea was that you would give a grant of land to an institution that would then be sold, the proceeds of which then would fund an endowment, and that was written in the Morrill grant.
So it wasn't that you were given a grant of land and then you build like the college on that land.
Right.
That was not the intent of it. It was that there was an awful lot of land.
Was
Yes.
an asset.
But the land was the asset, like
As an asset.
Yeah, a monetizable asset, and you used those proceeds to be able to build. I just was
Right.
emphasizing that point.
Some of the land was in Ohio. Most of it was sort of west of the Mississippi, and I couldn't tell you exactly where, but a lot of it was the federal lands in the west. And our land grant yielded a $350,000 endowment, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but in the 19th century, that was a pretty sizable endowment, and made, I think, other colleges and universities in Ohio quite jealous of us. But it's said very explicitly that the endowment isn't to be used to buy buildings and these sorts of things, and it was pretty clear the endowment was to make tuition either unnecessary and in fact. That very first day, the Ohio Agricultural and Mechanical College, there was no tuition. We didn't charge tuition.
There were fees that were added over time.
Fees, yes.
And the fees started looking more, but at the very beginning in the 1870s, the idea was that there would not be tuition, that would be an affordable opportunity for these families to be able to send their students. And we've been pleased lately to be able to cobble together grants to be able to, particularly for the lowest income families, to be able to make it that tuition barrier is minimized.
But while you think these are not synonyms, affordability and access, but affordability clearly helps define access to education.
Gentlemen, thank you. I have really enjoyed talking to you all and appreciate you educating us about land grant, what that mission is, and the remarkable history here at Ohio State.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Coming up next, not all Ohio State traditions survive. Then, you never know what will turn up in the University District. Every Buckeye knows about cherished traditions like dotting the I or singing Carmen, Ohio at the end of a game. But it turns out that not every campus tradition survives, and there's usually a good reason for their demise.
A lot of the traditions at Ohio State were born in the late 19th, early part of the 20th century, and they came largely from the activity of students. There was the curriculum that students, had to take, their math and their science and those sorts of classes. But then there was a very well-developed extracurriculum, it was called, and that included things, for instance, like literary societies. In fact, it was one of the first groups that formed on campus. One of the first student groups on campus were literary societies to read and discuss literature. And also, given where the university and where society was at the time, it was a literary society just for men, but then women developed their own literary society, the Browning Literary Society. And that was the way in which a lot of what we think of as campus or university traditions, they were born from these kinds of student activities. Football and sports generally at Ohio State also began as a kind of an extracurricular. It was part of the extracurriculum that students started. So football was started really as a kind of a student club, group of students getting together. And it wasn't really organized by the university until about 1898. And that's true for a lot of sports. Baseball was another one of sports, track running events. These would have been pursued by students, and then only later does the university sort of take ownership of them. So there's a lot of traditions, I think, like football, that were born of student activities. One of the traditions that you would have seen, even in the early part of the 20th century, would have been the requirement that freshmen wear beanies. There were all sorts of penalties, demerits and otherwise, if you were caught walking around campus without your freshman beanie on it. And that was a tradition that lasted probably until about the 1930s. We started to see it go by the wayside, especially because of the Great Depression, and certainly by the time you get returning GIs after the Second World War. There's not the same sort of tradition of freshmen wearing beanies. One tradition that we don't practice anymore is the cane rush. And we don't know when it started. It was probably sometime in the late 19th century. So it was a contest between the freshman and sophomore classes, male students. There was a cane, about sort of this high, and the cane rush was sort of like a combination of sort of rugby and Red Rover and beating up your opponent. But the idea was to move the cane across a boundary. And it was essentially, as I say, just large numbers of freshmen and sophomore students banging their heads against each other and roughhousing in such a way to move the cane across. In some ways, there is a tension, I think, between maintaining and holding on to traditions and being forward-facing, forward-looking. But I think it's a useful and creative tension, and I don't see them necessarily as being at odds with each other. Traditions are as much a connection to the past. And as an historian, of course, I always teach my students about the importance of that connection to the past. As our university attracts more what we call non-traditional students, I wonder what new traditions will form because of that kind of student body.
Coming up next, the University District turns up a treasure trove of memorabilia. And then, what soil research tells us about global warming. The University District, the neighborhood surrounding the Ohio State campus, has always been known for its vitality, rapid change, and places to gather. It's also produced a motherlode of fascinating memorabilia, as we found on a visit to Ohio History Connection.
Hey, Matt.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I know it's a cliche to start a conversation this way, but What's your sign?
This is the sign for Larry's Bar, an iconic campus area bar that existed from about the 1920s up through 2008.
And a lot of people here in Columbus watching would recognize this sign, is that correct?
I think so. A lot of people are very familiar with the sign. It was on High Street right along in the student bar area. Kind of stood out a little bit from the other student bars in that it attracted a different clientele. A lot of neighborhood people, graduate students, professors, and just people who were just in the area and wanted to stop by and have a relaxing time.
I understand Larry's has a connection with poetry.
Yes, they started a poetry night in 1984, and that ran all the way to the end in 2008. It resulted in having a lot of local poets and some national poets come by, and they put out Larry's Poetry Review, a publication that contained the poems.
Huh. Well, another figure I've heard appeared at Larry's was kind of a poet, but a musician too, Phil Oakes.
Phil Oakes is supposedly rumored to have had one of his first gigs there as part of a duo before he became a national folk singer. Well, he's still a student at Ohio State.
Yeah, and for a while he kind of rivaled Dylan as the voice of his generation.
That's true.
So who owned this bar?
It's owned by the Paletti family. They were area restaurateurs. They had other restaurants. In fact, Larry's started as the Lawrence Grill at 5th and High, and in the 1920s, the family moved it down to its final location in the campus area.
And the family that had the bar also had a connection with another well-known Columbus family.
Yes, they were related through marriage to one of the Marzettis, of the family that had the Marzetti restaurant, and of course the Marzetti salad dressings.
People know that product for sure. What else do you have for us?
Well,
this looks like more food items.
yes, these are from some campus area restaurants that have been very famous over time.
Again, people who went to campus or lived in that area would know these.
Oh yes, very well.
So Matt, tell us about these menus, about this one here on top.
Sharbert's was a campus institution that was located near the old Long's bookstore by 15th Avenue. It was a famous hangout. It had lots of different things for people to eat during the day.
Was it mostly a student hangout, or were there other folks there too?
I think the students did like going there a lot. One interesting note is that the Char Bar is its sister restaurant.
I see.
And still around.
I see, okay, great. Let's show us another menu.
Here's Toleda's, which was originally up on North High toward Clintonville. And it was a very popular Brownsville-style Mexican restaurant, Brownsville, Texas. And it was there for a long time. I think it was one of the first places you could get Mexican food in the Columbus area.
I don't doubt it, yeah. And here's a menu from the Blue Danube. The original restaurant was there for years and years and years.
That's right. It was a long-time campus institution. It's well known to people. Their parents went there, their grandparents went there. People kept going to it for a long time.
Right. And what was I love the cigarette burn. That seems so appropriate on this menu.
Very authentic.
Yes. And what was the special dish there?
Well, they had something called the Dube Dinner Deluxe, which involved a bottle of champagne and 2 grilled cheese sandwiches.
Well, that sounds perfect. Well, Matt, these menus are great because they show us that this area has always been thriving. There have been a lot of changes, but it's always been a popular area and a place that people have visited quite a bit.
That's correct.
Well, thanks for sharing these with us.
Thank you for coming.
Soil is the basis of terrestrial life. All terrestrial life, every living thing on the planet depends on soil. And yet this material which is hidden beneath the surface of the earth is underappreciated, not recognized.
Dr. Lal is very interested in knowing how agriculture can be sustainable and what practices can be shown are not sustainable.
So what we have been trying to do is see if we can restore the health of the soil.
If you raise the soil quality in the world, you've raised food for people. We're going to have 9 billion people in the foreseeable future. Soil is what's going to, so is everything.
Here's the cover crop that you want.
These are These are radishes, and they're planted, they put a big root down the ground about that big and about that deep that break up the soil.
No-till farming is, in simple word, plowless agriculture. Do not plow the land. Plowing was necessary because of weed control. But now we know control weed by other methods other than plowing.
The cobs and the fodder are back on the ground. I want you to look to see that there's a complete ground cover. Well, in today's atmosphere, with the world thinking about climate change, Dr. Lau is really the guru of carbon sequestration. And carbon sequestration is the low-hanging fruit that we could get. We can store carbon in the ground, prevent it from going in the atmosphere, and improve soil productivity and or food production for the world.
At the same time, we have younger generation getting education in that. You know, I feel very privileged. I had 112 students so far, 175 visiting scholars, 56 postdoctoral fellows, 350 people from around the world. So they are ambassadors, not only of this science, what we are doing, but also of the Ohio State University. They carry that Ohio State flag with them wherever they go.
So right here we just harvested a 1 square meter plot for the corn, and we're going to quantify the total fresh weight of the sample, and then later on quantify the amount of grain and biomass yield for that 1 square meter.
Plants are roughly 50% carbon, and so you can take the yield of a crop, say corn, and you can translate that to carbon and determine how much carbon is going to be in the soil. Once we have these yields, we can translate that to carbon, feed it into the model. At this point, the experiment started in Hoytville, and no-till was implemented, and you can see that carbon follows a different trajectory. Look at the difference in these treatments. If we can do no-till and we can have better yields and better soil health, then that's an argument to put forward to farmers to say, you know what, you really should look at this and consider this, because it's not only helping your bottom line, it's helping the people you feed. So it's a win-win.
It's a great example to me of what is so important about science and what's important about the best science. When you make discoveries that change the way the world's experts in your field think about the work they do. And that is what Dr. Lal has done.
As long as you are consuming the natural resources, food, water, elements coming from the soil, you owe it to soil to put something back, to give something back, whatever you can. Otherwise, we have no right to eat.
We, as a human society, we think about short-term gains, short-term profit, more than long-term sustainability. That challenge is the motivator, is the driving force. Is that what drives me to travel? Even a day after I come from one place, I'll go to another place because I think it's important that I convey that message to policymakers, to heads of states. Just a message that the life depends on soil, that the human survival depends on soil. That's the challenge, that's the driving force. That is something that is never ending. It will continue long after I am gone.
Thanks for being with us. And remember, you can catch all of our episodes on columbusneighborhoods.org. Plus, see our stories on the WOSU mobile app, and you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'll see you back here next week on Columbus Neighborhoods.
Support for Columbus Neighborhoods is provided by American Electric Power is proud to sponsor WOSU Public Media Columbus Neighborhoods. Working together with our communities, we're committed to powering a bright, boundless future for us all.
At Ohio Health, we believe it's important to have a healthy understanding of the world around you. That's why we're proud sponsors of WOSU Public Media and their work to educate, entertain, and inspire the people we serve.
Bailey Cavalieri, your relationship with your law firm doesn't need to be complicated, it just needs to be right. And by viewers like you. Thank you.